What's up, Vikings Nation? This is Victor, and welcome back to Report Vikings, your home for real Minnesota Vikings news, real analysis, and real fan reactions. And today, man, we've got a lot to talk about, because the Vikings are already making moves for 2026, and some of them might surprise a lot of people. Just a few days after beating the Packers to close out the season, yeah, you love to see that. Kevin O'Connell and the front office didn't waste any time. The Vikings started reshaping the roster, bringing back 8 players on reserve/future contracts, including a former Seahawks playmaker. That tells me one thing: this team is already thinking about depth, competition, and culture going into next year. But here's where things get interesting. While the Vikings are locking in depth pieces and planning for the future, there's a growing belief around the league that Minnesota could be preparing for a major emotional cut. We're talking about a 2-time Pro Bowler, a fan favorite, and a guy who's now being mentioned as a potential cap casualty. According to ESPN, cutting this superstar could save the Vikings up to $16 million in cap space if it's a post-June 1 move. And when you look at the numbers, under 500 receiving yards in back-to-back seasons, injuries piling up, and him ranking 35th among tight ends in ESPN's receiver score, the question becomes real uncomfortable but necessary. Is this the smart football move, or are the Vikings about to lose a leader in the locker room? And that's what this video is all about. We're going to break down why these roster moves matter, what they tell us about the Vikings' direction, and whether moving on from our fan favorite actually makes sense when you look at the cap, the draft, and the future of this offense. But before we dive into all of that, if you love Vikings content, if you ride with this team through the highs and the heartbreaks, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and help us hit our goal of 4,000 subscribers. You have no idea how much that support means. Now, let's talk about what the Vikings are really building for 2026 and why this offseason could change everything. All right, I need you to buckle up for this one, because this is a conversation that a lot of Vikings fans are not ready to have. There's a new prediction out there saying the Minnesota Vikings could be moving on from TJ Hockenson. Yes, that TJ Hockenson, a former Pro Bowler. And it's all about money, production, and injuries. And the big question is this the smart football move or a huge mistake? We're going to break it all down today. The cap savings, the numbers, the injury concerns, and what this could mean for the future of this offense. So, according to Aaron Schatz from ESPN, the Vikings are being projected to cut TJ Hockenson as a cost-cutting move this offseason. Why? Because the Vikings are tight against the salary cap, and cutting Hockenson could free up serious money. Here's the key part. Cutting Hockenson before June 1st would save the Vikings nearly $9 million. A post-June 1st designation could save up to $16 million in cap space. And when you're a team trying to reshape your roster, that kind of money matters a lot. Now let's talk numbers, because feelings aside, the production has dropped. TJ Hockenson is coming off 2 straight seasons with fewer than 500 receiving yards. That's a big deal. This past season, he ranked 35th among tight ends in ESPN's receiver scores. That puts him closer to backup level efficiency than elite starter impact. For a guy carrying a top-tier tight end contract, that's not where you want to be. And remember, this isn't just about stats, it's about availability. This is the part Vikings fans don't like talking about. Hockenson has dealt with multiple injuries, and durability has become a real concern. When you're paying premium money at tight end, you need consistency, not just talent. And at this stage of his contract, the Vikings have to ask, are we paying for past production or future impact? That's the cold business side of the NFL. Now, let me be clear. I like TJ Hockenson. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler, he plays hard, and when healthy, he can still help an offense. But this is where I'm going to be honest with you as a Vikings fan. If you can get similar production from a rookie tight end or a cheaper free agent, and then use that saved cap space to improve the offensive line, add defensive help, or support your quarterback situation, then yeah, it starts to make sense. This isn't about disrespecting Hockenson, it's about roster efficiency. If the Vikings do move on, they've got options. 2026 NFL Draft. This draft class is expected to be deep at tight end, and Minnesota could land a younger, cheaper player with upside. Free agency. They could also bring in a veteran tight end at a fraction of the cost, someone who gives you solid blocking and 400 to 500 yards without killing the cap. That's how smart teams stay competitive. And let's not forget, Hockenson is still only 28 years old. He's not done. If the Vikings cut him, he will land on another roster, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he has a bounce-back season somewhere else. Sometimes a change of scenery helps both sides. This move would be emotional, but possibly necessary. The Vikings aren't saying Hockenson isn't talented, they're saying the price no longer matches the production. And in today's NFL, that's everything. Now, I want to hear from you. Would you cut TJ Hockenson to save cap space, or do you think the Vikings should keep him and ride it out? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. The season just ended, and the Minnesota Vikings are already moving. I'm talking roster shakeups, future contracts, draft positioning, and some big questions that could define the 2026 season. Kevin O'Connell didn't waste a single day after that win over Green Bay. The Vikings immediately started locking guys up, including a former Seahawks playmaker. And honestly, this tells us a lot about how this front office is thinking. So today, we're breaking down why the Vikings re-signed 8 players, what these moves really mean and what they don't, why the center position is officially a problem, and what the 2026 schedule already tells us about how tough this season could be. But before we dive in, smash that like button, subscribe to Report Vikings, and help us reach our goal of 4,000 subscribers. All right, let's talk Vikings football. One day after the season finale, the Vikings signed 8 players to reserve/future contracts. That's not flashy, that's not headline grabbing, but it is important. These are players who finished the season on the practice squad and are now being kept in the building for off-season workouts, OTAs, and training camp. Here's the full list. Linebacker, Josh Ross, former Seahawks. Offensive lineman, Caleb Etienne and Vershawn Lee. Safety, Khalef Halasi. Tight end, Bryson Nesbitt. Wide receivers, Dante Fleming, Jeshaun Jones, and Joaquin Davis. Now, let's be real. Most of these guys are fighting for roster spots, but this tells us something very important. Josh Ross is the name that jumps out here. He started his career with the Seahawks, and while he's not a star, this is the type of player coaches love. Physical, special teams value, knows how to survive in the league. These are the guys who end up being near LB4 or LB5, core special teamers, and injury insurance. Every good roster needs players like this, especially late in the season. Out of the entire group, only Jeshaun Jones and Vershawn Lee actually saw regular season action. That matters. Jeshaun Jones brings versatility as a receiver, not a WR1 or WR2, but a guy who can compete for a WR5/6 role, contribute on special teams, and step in if injuries hit. Vershawn Lee gives the Vikings something they desperately need: offensive line depth. And if you watch the Vikings this season, you know depth on the offensive line is not optional. Let's be honest as fans. A lot of these players will not be on the final 53-man roster. After free agency, after the draft, numbers change fast. But what this move does is protect the Vikings from being thin during the offseason program and gives them cheap competition at the back end of the roster. Smart football. Now, let's talk about the biggest concern on this roster: center. Ryan Kelly signed a 2-year, $18 million deal, but the reality is brutal. He suffered 3 concussions in 2025, finished the season on injured reserve, and according to ESPN's Kevin Seifert, it's hard to imagine him back in 2026. That's scary. Michael Juergens? It's not clear he's ready to be the full-time starter. Blake Brandel started 6 of the 9 games Kelly missed, and that tells you everything you need to know about the lack of trust and stability there. If you don't have a center, your offense collapses, period. The Vikings will pick 18th overall in the 2026 NFL Draft. That's a really interesting spot. You're not bad enough to get elite talent falling to you, but you're in perfect position to draft a starting caliber center or trade back and add more picks. And honestly, center might be the most urgent need on this entire roster. You can't develop a young QB, you can't protect the pocket, you can't run the ball, all without a reliable center. Now let's talk schedule because it's officially set. The Vikings will face the entire AFC East, the entire NFC South, plus the Indianapolis Colts, the Washington Commanders, and the San Francisco 49ers. That is not a cakewalk. You're talking about physical defenses, tough road games, and teams that will absolutely test the trenches, which again brings us back to offensive line depth and center play. These roster moves aren't flashy, but they're foundational. The Vikings are securing depth, protecting themselves against injuries, and clearly preparing for major changes through the draft. This is how smart teams operate before free agency chaos begins. Now, I want to hear from you. Should center be the Vikings' top priority in 2026 draft? Which of these reserve/future players do you think actually makes the roster? Drop your takes in the comments. I read every single one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and help us reach 4,000 subscribers right here on Report Vikings. This is Victor Skull.